Om Agnanatimarantasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from the book. He wasn't going back to the loft, that was for sure. But where could he go? The pigeons flew from roof to roof, traffic rumbled by, and the ever-present bums loitered about, getting drunker on cheap, poisonous alcohol. Although Prabhupada's home had suddenly become an insane terror, the street at its door was also a hellish, dangerous place. He was shaken. He could call Dr. Mishra and they might take him in. But that chapter of his life was over, and he had gone on to something better. He had his own classes, young people chanting and hearing. Was it all over now? After 9 months in America, he had finally gotten a good response to his preaching and Kirtana. He couldn't just quit now. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaja, whomever, whom everyone knew and respected in Vrindavana as a distinguished scholar and devotee, who had an open invitation to see the Vice President of India and many other notables, now had to face starkly that he had not one friend of stature in the United States. Suddenly he was homeless. He was as homeless as any derelict on the street. In fact, many of them, with their long-time berths in flop houses, were more secure than he. They were ruined but settled. The Bowery could be a chaotic hell if you weren't on a very purposeful errand, going directly to the store or back to your place. It was no place to stand, wondering where will you live or is there a friend you can turn to. He wasn't on his way to Chinatown to shop, nor was he taking a little stroll soon to return to the shelter of the loft. If he couldn't go to the loft, he had no place. How difficult it was becoming to preach in America amid these crazy people. He had written, he had written prophetically in his poem the day he had arrived in Boston Harbor. My dear Lord, I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do with me whatever you like. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? What about his scheduled classes? What about David? Should you go back and try to walk with the boy? This has been David's first fit of violence. But there had been other tense moments. David had a habit of leaving soap on the floor of the shower stall, and Prabhupada had asked him not to because it was a hazard. But David wouldn't listen. Prabhupada had continued to remind him, and one day David had gotten angry and shouted at him. But there was no real enmity. Even today's incident had not been a matter of personal differences. The boy was a victim. Prabhupada walked quickly. He had free passage on the India line. He could go home to Vrindavana. But the spiritual master had ordered him to come here. The strong leader of Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura, he had written, while crossing the Atlantic, the holy name of the Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world. Before nightfall, he would have to find some place to stay, a way to keep up the momentum of his preaching. This is what it meant to be working without government sponsorship, without the support of any religious organization, without a patron. It meant being vulnerable and insecure. Prabhupada faced the crisis as a test from Krishna. The instruction of Bhagavad Gita was to depend on Krishna for protection. In all activities, just depend upon me and my work, and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. You will pass over all the obstacles of the conditioned life by my grace. He decided to phone Carl Jurgens and ask him for help. Hearing the Swami's voice on the phone, it was on emergency. Carl at once agreed that Prabhupada could move in with him and his wife Eva. Their place was close by on Center Street, 5 blocks west of Bowery near Chinatown. Carl would be right over. After Carl found Prabhupada, they went straight to Carl's place, an AIR loft, smaller than the one Prabhupada had been living in. It had a main living area, large and open, with areas for the kitchen and bedroom partitioned off. There were decorative indoor plants and profusion of throw pillows placed all around. Carl's loft was much brighter than the dingy factory-like space in the loft on the Bowery. The floor was painted bright orange. Carl used to say it looked like the deck of a ship. The walls and ceiling were white, and light from seven skylights filled the room. Carl and Eva settled the Swami in one corner. Prabhupada had left his belongings at David's loft and didn't want to go back. So Carl went over to pick up a few essential items. Prabhupada asked him to leave most of his things, including his books, suitcases, and reel-to-reel tape recorder, where they are. Although by this time David had come down from the intense effects of the LSD, he remained crazy. When Carl arrived at the loft, the door was locked and David was inside, afraid to let anyone in. Although finally he relented, he had shut and locked all the windows, making the loft oppressively hot and stuffy. Bill Epstein, who also came by that day, analyzed David as having had a drug-induced nervous breakdown, a narcopsychosis. Although David was sorry, he had explained that the Swami neither Bill nor Carl thought Prabhupada should live with David again. Apparently, Prabhupada's chance of making the loft into a Radhakrishna temple were finished. Carl and Bill gathered up a few of the Swami belongings and David stayed behind in the loft. He wanted to be alone. Carl Egan knew Prabhupada's living habits and wanted to accommodate him with a suitable place to live and work. In a small alcove at one end of his loft, Carl had a small study which he allocated for Swami. Carl also set up a cushioned dais and arranged the living room around it so that guests could sit on the floor in a semicircle. Carl's wife, who didn't really like the idea of Swami moving in, agreed to cover a few cushions with Indian Madras material for him anyway. Things were smoothly for a while. Prabhupada continued his morning and evening classes, and many of the Bowery hip crowd came by. Three of his regular callers lived right in the same building, and few others, including Carl's brother, were just around the block. Michael Grant, James Green, even David Allen came once. Don Nathanson, an artist. I was at Carl's loft, and the Swami's comes strolling in one day. So I already knew he was on the scene from David's. Most musicians were coming. They were enjoying the private morning session with him. And that's really strange in itself because these people were up almost all night and he used to do it at the 6 in the morning for 1 hour. He would lead them in chanting with his hand cymbals. Da 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 da. It was just strange because that crowd was heavy into drugs and they were well read. But for a short period they used to go every morning, 9 or 10 of them. And they felt good about it. They felt very good that they did. They felt good. They felt very good that they did that in the morning. I will stop here and very beautifully narrated about Prabhupada's effort, struggle with the drug addicted boy, and a place that he's often at Carl's place, and a continuation of Kirtan and book reading going on. It really gave me some nostalgic moments, as if I was at the scene and then witnessing everything by myself.